When you think of a disco ball, right? So you've been to a disco, and there's a big disco ball, and that disco ball is emanating light all around the whole area, and each light seems separate, but that's just an illusion.
Mm.
They're all just the quality of the ball. So all we are, all a human being is, and all sentient beings, and even all objects, we are just qualities of the absolute. But the absolute is so unfathomable. Even like I use the word the absolute because it's the closest word we have, but really it's unnameable. The Tao did a better job in saying that which you speak of is not the Tao. It did a better job. But we need something to call it. But it is we everything is a quality of the absolute, and all human beings have all of the qualities and the knowledge and the wisdom of the absolute in every single human, every single without exception. There's only one absolute, and everybody's included. And this can cause a bit of tension because, like, what about people who do this stuff and that stuff? So, I normally I prefer to talk about the experience of awakening, because when we go into the philosophy of awakening, we are straying a little bit from the direct experience. But as you brought it up, my own opinion, so this is the other things I'm describing, you can also verify. And I think it's very important that I share information you can verify. Otherwise, we might as well be in a cacao ceremony or stuff. Nothing wrong with that, but it's like speculative spirituality, right? So, but this is speculative, and I will say my own experience from watching how life is, I believe that absolute is just the unfolding of every possible experience that can ever be had by all beings. And that's why you've got an 120-year-old grandmother who's got 7 generations around her when she passes. And then you've got babies that never make it into life. And then you have war-torn regions and opulent wealth. I think all of those sparkles of light from the disco ball of the absolute, they're all just experiencing every variation that's available. And we are also that. And that's why I don't really, like, in my own personal life, that has been quite challenging in many ways and also quite great. I'm not really attached to it because I'm just being the absolute. I'm being that one spark of the absolute, and it's great. It's great because ultimately, so this is the great compassion of the nature of the absolute. And the Tibetan texts talk a lot about this, but they call it the great perfection, right? So what this the great compassion is that, yes, each of these sparkles have their own apparent existence and story, but there's never there. This is quite controversial, but there's never any suffering because they're always the absolute. Even in the appearance of suffering, this is really quite wild. Even in the appearance of suffering, if you really look at the knower's not suffering. I call this ow wow. I call it that for a reason. I sometimes, well, I used to be a bit clumsy, and I would kick the leg of this sofa bed in the living room on my toe, and I would go, ow, wow. Like the ow would go instant, but it would be followed with the wow of the absolute. So, but I'm very careful. I don't often share this because the egoic mind can take that information and start telling people you're not suffering. there isn't anything to suffer. They put it elsewhere. So I remind people that if someone comes up to you, if you go up to somebody and their cat just died, and you say it's just the absolute, that's your lack of wisdom. If they come up to you and they say, my cat just died, but I'm feeling these emotions, and they seem like there's a lot of story there. And although I loved my cat, I can see that its nature it never had a separate origin from my own consciousness. So I'm feeling a little bit free around this, even though it's tragic. I feel free. That's their wisdom. So we can only ever discuss the, the nature of suffering from our own perspective. Otherwise, we can stray into sort of spiritual gaslighting a little bit. So
Mm.
we'd be very mindful that I don't. If someone tells me they're suffering, they get a hug. They don't get a lecture.